I'm Lee C. Camp, and this is No Small Endeavor, exploring what it means to live a good life.
The more I learned about history, the more I saw that history really was full of people who learned to work together despite an extremely fractious, contentious history.
That's educator, author Sharon McMahon, known by her 1.3 million Instagram followers as America's government teacher.
When you're easily angered, you're easily manipulated. You can see that play out in spades throughout America right now.
We discuss what being nonpartisan might entail, the pitfalls of a career in social media, and her new book, The Small and the Mighty.
Nobody can do everything, but everyone can do something. And we cannot allow our inability to solve all of the world's problems paralyze us into doing nothing.
All coming right up. Hey friend, if you didn't know, I started a newsletter a while back that comes out every 2 weeks. I've been delighted to hear from so many of you about positive response to the newsletter. We call it the No Small Endeavor Notebook, where I riff on themes and topics related to our podcast, giving you additional material for thinking and doing in your own quest to make sense of what it might mean to live a good life. Join us by going now to nosmallendeavor.com and sign up there. Again, go to nosmallendeavor.com to sign up now for our free No Small Endeavor Notebook newsletter. You know, it can be hard sometimes to quiet your mind at night with all that to-do list for tomorrow running through your mind, but bowl and branch sheets can help you truly unwind with a softness so extraordinary that your whole body just relaxes into sleep. Bowl and Branch's signature sheets are made free from toxins with the finest 100% organic cotton. They feel buttery soft just right out of the package, and they come with a 30-night worry-free guarantee. They're ethically crafted by expert artisans who earn fair wages, and if you're looking for a new set of sheets, then go check out Bowl and Branch. You can tell the quality immediately, and that sweet color selection, it made me happy to put our new Bowl and Branch sheets on our bed. Feel the difference an extraordinary night's sleep can make with Bowl and Branch. Get 15% off plus free shipping on your first set of sheets at bowlandbranch.com/NSE. That's Bowl and Branch, BOLLAND, branch.com/NSE to save 15% and unlock free shipping. Exclusions apply.
How do you top your love for your cat? With a cascade of decadent savory gravy over a mouth-watering mousse pâté. Fancy Feast gems. 2 gourmet pâtés in one convenient pack. Simply peel and plate to reveal a pyramid shape that makes eating delightful and pamper her with an experience as extraordinary as she is. Turn the everyday into the extraordinary with Fancy Feast gems.
I'm Lee C. Camp. This is No Small Endeavor, exploring what it means to live a good life. Living here in Nashville, Tennessee, a blue city in the middle of a large red state, it's easy to get pulled into the binary world of identity politics. Just a 10-minute drive can take you from a neighborhood full of yard signs declaring a woman's right to choose straight into a come and take it territory. And in a media culture that leaves little room for nuance, it's easy to make assumptions about who our neighbors are, what they value, and how they live their lives. In such a moment of deep political and ideological divide, what does it mean to truly be nonpartisan? And how might that outlook change the way we move in the world? Our guest today might have some answers for us. Sharon McMahon, widely known as America's government teacher, is an award-winning educator and a trusted guide to civic life. She rose to national prominence during the 2020 election for her calm, factual breakdowns of government and law, amassing an immense community known as the Governerds. Her debut book, The Small and the Mighty, became an instant New York Times bestseller. Sharon is also the host of the top-ranked podcast, Here's Where It Gets Interesting, and the creator of The Preamble, a widely read nonpartisan newsletter that now reaches more readers than nearly every print newspaper in America. Here's our conversation with Sharon McMahon. Welcome, Sharon.
So happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Very pleased to have you with us, and we're looking forward to you coming to Nashville in November.
I know. I'm very excited. First of all, I love Nashville. We've actually been talking about doing this for almost 2 years. So I'm so happy to see this finally come to fruition, and I'm really excited.
I am as well. So anybody that wants to come see Sharon, join us in our big end of year blowout show here in Nashville, No Small Endeavor Live, which we have every year Sunday night prior to Thanksgiving. This year it will be at the spectacular Skirmerhorn Symphony Hall. And we'll have a full, outstanding Nashville house band, some surprise vocalists, and Sharon. I've been asked to let people know they can get tickets by going to our website, nosmallendeavor.com. People who are members of NSC Plus can get immediate pre-show access to tickets, and then they'll all be going on sale to the general public on August 11. So go out, check that out today, and come join Sharon and myself here in November 23. I would like to begin by asking, how do you describe what you do?
I've long struggled with an elevator pitch because I have my fingers in so many different pies. The broad overarching term that I think makes sense in my mind is educator. The genesis story of everything that I do now is related to my background as a teacher. I spend a lot of my day writing and editing. And so, maybe it's time for a title change into author. There isn't one great answer that I can give you. Everything I do is driven by a mission. And so I do think that my mission definitely plays into all the different activities that I choose to engage in.
How would you describe that mission?
So much of our discussion about history, about government, about politics is really rooted in political identity. That political identity has changed over the years to become more important to many people than even their religious faith. That's not my opinion. That's borne out by multiple studies that say political identity is a better harbinger of understanding somebody than how they might identify as an evangelical Christian or a Methodist or a Jew or whatever that might be. So there's not a place to discuss these issues, is what I found, that is not attached to a political identity. And it's also important to me that we don't get stuck in an amoral environment in which all ideas are equally good, in which all possible outcomes are worth considering, in which people are dehumanized, in which we don't appeal to the better angels of our nature. My goal is to always have a bright moral compass infused through everything that I do.
As I have spent some time getting acquainted with your work, I thought I'm just going to see if I can come up with a list of what I think are recurring themes, what I see bubble up repeatedly. So first, I see in you a call to intellectual humility. That is, that issues are often complicated and you shouldn't be fearful of complexity and nuance. Second, history honors the doers, not the mere critics and talkers. 3, your focus, taking the title of your book, The Small and the Mighty, that is, contribute what you've got for the sake of the good of our community and our neighbors. 4th, to work alongside with, even learn to love presumed enemies. And 5th, work at and develop the courage to tell the truth in public and to do so without outrage. What did I miss, or which of those wouldn't be on your list?
I wouldn't say that I disagree with any of those. As a big recurring theme of my work is nobody can do everything, but everyone can do something. And we cannot allow our inability to solve all of the world's problems paralyze us into doing nothing. And I think that is often the place we find ourselves in this moment of being so chronically online, where we're so surrounded by a fire hose of information. The mental paralysis, the compassion fatigue is very, very real. And I don't think our brains are hardwired to be able to withstand this amount of incoming bad news. I do think humans innately want to help each other. This is how we have developed in complex, interdependent societies. This is how we've survived. When we see the misfortune of others or we see an injustice, it triggers in us this desire to help. But then what happens is we realize we bump up against our own capacity. We bump up against our own financial and time resources, our own intellectual resources, and we realize, like, how am I supposed to do everything about every famine, every flood, every fire, every lawsuit, every person who's been wrongfully convicted? Like, what do I owe the world? And it is easy to get so overwhelmed and bogged down in that the enormity of the world's problems that we just are like, I can't even decide what to do next.
In thinking about people who have been proactive in that way and made a contribution to the world, where do you remember in your own kind of autobiographical narrative first being moved by someone who took what they had and exercised it for the common good?
Well, I think most of us can think about stories in our own personal lives where we have encountered a situation where we're like, I don't know why that person helped me, but they did. There was a time when I was a super poor college student and I was working 2 jobs. I grew up in a really cold northern climate where you have to salt the roads really aggressively to make them passable. And my car had so much rust that it had literally eaten holes in the floor of the car. And that's not an exaggeration. I had pieces of cardboard on the floor of my car. I worked hard to save up my money and I paid $500 for that car. Okay. So that's what we're talking about here. So I'm trying to go to college and I'm trying to work multiple jobs. And it was like impossible to keep a roof over my head and keep up with my very demanding schoolwork. I was studying, taking all these constitutional law classes, which required like an insane amount of reading really difficult Supreme Court cases and then being ready to talk about them intelligently the next day. So I definitely remember this moment where I was getting off of my job and I was just feeling very sort of like dejected and overwhelmed. And I got out to my car. And when I opened the door, what fluttered down onto the seat of my car was a $100 bill. I still to this day don't know where that came from. Obviously, somebody put it there and they got into my car somehow, which, by the way, the doors didn't lock and it had no radio, Lee. It had no radio and the doors didn't lock. I wasn't homeless. I wasn't destitute, but they obviously knew that I needed it. And I can think of a lot of examples of times in my own life and times in the lives of others where someone has just done for one person what they wish they could do for everybody. That feeling has stuck with me over the years. Somebody helped me just because they could.
Yeah.
I'm still carrying that forward.
Yeah, that's a beautiful line. Someone did for one person what they wish they could do for everybody. That's beautiful. Thinking about working alongside, even to learn, maybe to love or at least honor presumed enemies, where does that kind of bubble up in your life story?
It certainly still exists even in my own family. The first moment that I can think of this concept of like, you're going to have to make it and break it when it comes to this relationship, that has always been a theme in my own personal family. And it remains a theme in my family. I have not solved the issue. And I think a lot of times people come to me looking for like, how do I fix my relationship with my uncle? And I can certainly give them some tips, but there is still a chance that at the end of the day, it won't be fixed today. It won't be fixed today, but that doesn't mean it won't be fixed tomorrow. I think it's important to hold on to that sort of hope for the future. But there has never been a time in my life that I can remember everyone in my family getting along. In some cases, it meant a disintegration of relationship between siblings or a disintegration of relationship between parent and child. And in other cases, it meant a détente, where they just came to sort of an uneasy peace with each other. And in other times, it really did result in a relationship being mended. And all of those scenarios have something to teach us. And, the more I learn about history, the more I saw that history really was full of people who learned to work together for the good of their communities, despite an extremely fractious and contentious history together, personal history together, or broader communal history together, where somebody was actively working to harm a community that somebody was part of. The more I learn, the more I see evidence that that is how real progress is made. Real progress does not generally come from beating back your enemies. The World War IIs of the world are very unique in history, where there is a clear ideological enemy, right? A very clear, like, the Nazis are no good. And that's the reason we have over 9,000 books written about World War II. This is a topic that endlessly fascinates people, the battle of good versus evil playing out in the real world. That's not most conflicts. And that is not how most people have made progress in the world. That's not how women got the right to vote. That's not how the Black community gained civil rights. That's not how we now have the 14th Amendment. It's not from completely blowing your competition off the face of the planet. It's not from playing a zero-sum game.
Let's jump into this question about some of the challenges that arise from trying to take a nonpartisan approach. And, at first glance, I think for a lot of folks, the notion of nonpartisan kind of seems somewhat non-controversial. But let's kind of unpack that just a bit. And first tell us, at best, what does nonpartisan mean to you? And then second, what are some of the challenges that arise in seeking to be nonpartisan?
Yeah, well, to me, partisanship is blind allegiance to a person or a party or a viewpoint without critical examination, without being willing to consider alternative viewpoints. I just think that that is, in many ways, the root of our ills. Right? Like, you can go back to Andrew Jackson and John Quincy Adams and the amount of name calling and mudslinging and this kind of stuff that arose from that election. So to me, that's what partisanship means. And I don't belong to a political party. I actually don't give a crap about political parties. I don't care if the Republicans succeed in terms of, like, yay, I really hope the Republican Party wins all the elections. No, I hope good, moral people win elections, and that we can have legitimate debates about a variety of possible ways to solve problems. That's what I hope. I don't have any allegiance to the Democratic Party for the same reason. Minnesota doesn't require you to register with a political party to participate in primary elections. This is one of my beefs with the primary election process around the country. I think everybody should be like Minnesota. So many people tell me, like, I can't get on board with either of these parties, and so I can't participate in primary elections. And that seems like unfairly punitive to them, and I understand where they're coming from. So I don't belong to a party. I don't give money to a party. I think the party system desperately needs reform in the United States. But what nonpartisanship is not, it is not a belief that all candidates, all beliefs, all concepts, all ideas are equally valid and should be given equal time, attention, and weight, and that we should not steer someone towards an idea that aligns with the principles of democracy or aligns with moral values. Having complete neutrality actually is harmful, in my opinion. There's a difference between objective and neutral. Neutrality in the face of oppression always favors the oppressor. It always does. So to me, that's what the difference is it's a complete lack of allegiance to a party or a candidate. I feel more than free to criticize people of all parties, and do. If you're out here hiding gold bars in your pockets at your home and socking away hundreds of thousands of dollars of cash that you're taking from a foreign government while you are a sitting senator, you're going to get called out on it. Doesn't matter which party you belong to. You're committing identity theft while you're in the United States House of Representatives. I'm going to call you out on it. And to not do that because I belong to X party or Y party, to me, that is far more problematic than requiring a basic tenet of democratic principles that all members of a functioning democracy should be willing to agree to, that can serve as an objective benchmark against which we can judge behavior. That is more interesting and useful in my mind.
If you could wave a magic wand and affect one significant policy change in the United States that ideally could be construed as a sort of nonpartisan matter, what would that be?
It's easy, and it's something that the overwhelming majority of Americans on both sides of the aisle would agree with me on. I would get money out of politics. I would change the Constitution to eliminate money from electoral politics. Nearly every other democracy in the world does just that, including democracies that are much healthier than ours, that are not prone to excess factionalism, democracies in which their constituents are better represented, they feel more optimistic, more heard, they feel like their issues are being addressed. Nobody else has a two-party system that is ruled by billionaires. There's zero evidence that this has made us a better country. The opposite, I think, is true. So if I could do one thing that would radically change America, I would create a constitutional amendment eliminating private money from electoral politics.
You're listening to No Small Endeavor and a conversation with New York Times bestselling author, educator Sharon McMahon. I love hearing from you. Tell us what you're reading, who you're paying attention to, or send us feedback about today's episode. You can reach me at lee@nosmallendeavor.com. You can get show notes for this episode in your podcast app or wherever you listen. These notes include links to resources mentioned in the episode and a full transcript. We would be most appreciative if you'd go to your favorite podcast app and write us up a glowing 5-star review of No Small Endeavor, because those reviews help extend the reach of the beauty, truth, and goodness we are seeking to sow in the world. We'd love for you to come see Sharon and myself live at the Schermerhorn Symphony Center in Nashville on November 23 for our big end-of-year blowout show. NSC Plus subscribers can access pre-sale tickets from the day this episode airs, which is August 4, and tickets are available to the public from August 11. We don't want you to miss out. Get those tickets today. You can learn more at nosmallendeavor.com. Coming up, Sharon and I discuss her career in social media and a specific population of trolls who seem to come with the territory. It has been so delightful to see more and more listeners like you sign up for NSC Plus. Our growing community is made up of intelligent and thoughtful people looking for a holistic approach to human flourishing. Signing up for NSC Plus is also a way to support the show and the work we're doing, and in fact, we depend upon that kind of support. But in addition to supporting the show, you'll get exclusive access to bonus content, and the No Small Endeavor you've come to love will be completely ad-free. In fact, you won't even hear ads like this one. So go to nosmallendeavor.com and click Join NSC Plus to become a member of our community today. Join for as little as $5 a month. Again, go to nosmallendeavor.com, click on that red button that says Join NSC Plus to become a member today.
Hey, it's Paris. You know I love sparkly things, right? Like stars. Duh. And thanks to Hilton and AutoCamp, I just slept under them. Picture me, serving looks by the fire outside my luxurious Airstream, making s'mores with the kids, while a national park is our backdrop. The great outdoors meets Hilton hospitality. That's hot. Explore all the new ways to stay at Hilton.com. Hilton for the stay.
New Vitamin Water Zero Sugar Pineapple Passion Fruit is packed with vitamins. Just like the amount of peas we packed in that sentence. It's packed like your tote bag. The one you stole from your ex. Or your overpriced half a studio apartment. Or extra rushed rush hour traffic. Packed like your calendar. Triple booked at 5, of course. Grab a vitamin water. Did we mention it's packed with vitamins?
Being in this space where you're seeking to practice a nonpartisan approach while also speaking clearly, forthrightly on things that you believe need to be addressed and in some cases called out, what would you say are habits or dispositions that you have that help you do that kind of work well?
I do think that I have a personality that lends me to it. I'm not naturally prone to being a reactionary. I'm not naturally prone to feeling like the sky is falling at every turn. When you're easily angered, you're easily manipulated. And you can see that play out in spades throughout America right now. If I can make you afraid or angry, I can manipulate you.
It seems like that would be helpful if that were emblazoned every billboard in the country right now, right? If you were easily angered, you were easily manipulated. Yeah. But go ahead. Other habits, dispositions that help you do this well.
Yeah, and I'm not painting myself as some like, oh, I'm always zen, nothing ever bothers me. That's not what I'm saying. But I do think that I have an ability to separate ideas from people. To an extent, I will say there are exceptions, but I don't feel personally attacked if you have a different idea than I do. This is what my friend Adam Grant says. If you like being right, the fastest way to do that is to stop being wrong faster. And if you want to stop being wrong, you have to be able to consider alternative viewpoints.
In a recent social media post, you said trolls and death threats are real. They also take a huge toll on creators. I try to remember two things. If they can't keep me from doing it, they will try to keep me from enjoying it. Two, if they can keep me from enjoying it, they will get me to give up on my important work. And then you say, and so I remember my mantras. I refuse to be distracted from my important work. I refuse to let them steal my joy. And then I use the tools and coping mechanisms I need to support that. So my question there is, what are those tools and coping mechanisms that you use?
Well, some of it is repeating the mantra to myself. I refuse to let them steal my joy. I do think that's true. And I don't think that's just me. I honestly think that is a wisdom that applies to so many of us. There are forces that want to keep you from doing good in the world. And if they can't stop you from doing good, they'll try to make it so it's really not fun. So you want to voluntarily give up. So some of it is verbally saying, I'm not doing that. Some of it is self-protective strategies where, like the worse things are, the fewer DMs I read. I get over 10,000 DMs a day.
Oh, my.
That's not an exaggeration. It's not a fake number. Sometimes it's more than that. And the more I read them, the more death threats I read. How many death threats do you want to read each day?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like sometimes I can read 5, and sometimes the number I can read is none. I do have a number of grandma hobbies that I engage in regularly, which science demonstrates is important for your brain as almost anything else. Doing something with your hands is really important to your brain. I have beautiful gardens at my house. I spend time outside. So I do try to mentally shut off my engagement with that. And I do recognize not everybody is in the same situation. So I want to acknowledge that. But I do think that throughout time and space, even the most marginalized of groups have seen joy as an act of resistance. Jews in Nazi death camps viewed joy as an act of resistance. Like when the Holocaust ended, they felt like the biggest FU they could give Hitler was to have a bunch of babies and to have a party celebrating every milestone. So we're going to celebrate every wedding, every baby, every birthday, every holiday. Of course, we're going to grieve what we lost, and we're going to examine how we can never let that happen again. But we're not going to let that steal our joy in the future, because joy is in and of itself an act of resistance. I look too at people that I deeply admire, like Harriet Tubman. She had a fantastic sense of humor. This is something you never learn about people like her in the history books. You look at here's a list of facts of her life and 3 things that she did and whatever. She was well known for being funny. Some of the jokes that she would tell her audiences would still make you laugh. She had a traumatic brain injury that gave her what we know today as epilepsy. And she would have these, what they called fits or spells, where they were almost absent seizures, where you would just kind of stare off into space or you'd look like you were sleeping. They were not convulsive seizures. She knew that she had this proclivity. She would use it to play tricks on people. She would pretend to be sleeping, having one of her fits or spells, while everybody else was just chitter-chattering around her. And then one eye would pop open and she'd have something to say.
That's hilarious.
And they were Dang it. Dang it. So I do think that it's important for us to remember that despite the enormity of the world's problems, that joy in and of itself is an act of resistance.
What would you describe as maybe top contenders for your most significant vices in doing the work that you do?
I have to rein myself in on a daily basis from not posting all the snarky comebacks that my brain comes up with. I have so many great comebacks. I have so many great singers that I just never, ever, ever, ever get to put anywhere.
I will say that I saw one of your followers, the governor, referring to you as, oh, Sharon's getting spicy today.
Yeah, Spicy Sharon. Spicy Sharon is a persona that I do sometimes allow myself to indulge in. I try not to get into a back and forth with a specific person of like, Lee, too bad you're so stupid. Do you know what I mean? I try really hard not to get involved in that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Any other vices or continual things that you're grappling with?
As much as I encourage people to not be discouraged in doing good, I do think that's a really important thing that we have to remind ourselves of. Don't be discouraged in doing good because it's easy to be discouraged. It's human nature. Sometimes I am prone to feeling discouraged. Sometimes I am like, you know what? What if I just never posted a single thing on the internet again? Would anybody even notice? You know, sometimes I convince myself that what I'm up to really actually is pretty meaningless and I'm just twisting at windmills and nobody cares. So that's something that I try to rein in sometimes.
One much discussed article, you discussed an instance in which you got I think it was a DM that was very vile. You were called in conjunction with the F word, the C word, and this horribly demeaning message. Would you kind of share a little bit of that story with us?
Yeah, I'm used to getting nasty DMs. It's not unusual for me to get mean messages. Even people who are doing innocuous things like making cookies get ridiculous comments. And you're like, it's a cookie. It's a chocolate chip cookie. Back off. But when you mix in highly charged topics related to current events, it does tend to rile people up, no matter how gently you try to handle them. So the nasty messages are nothing really new. And there's sort of a vanilla flavor nasty message that I'm like, oh yeah, one of those doesn't even faze me. But sometimes the messages are so eye-popping that it's shocking to even me. And the message that you're referring to that I've written about was somebody who obviously disagreed with something that I was saying. And it was a man who said I was an effing C word, amongst other things. And I was like, excuse me? Like, I do not know you from Adam. Who are you to make this sort of assessment of me? So, of course, out of curiosity, I clicked on his profile, which he was just using his full legal name as his profile username, was not attempting to hide his identity. It was then, from there, not difficult at all to find him on Facebook quickly. I mean, I'm talking, it took me 2 minutes to find this out, that he is the husband of an elected official in the United States. And then from there, it was not difficult to find his LinkedIn and to find that he has positions on a number of boards, a number of charities and nonprofits, some of them including children's nonprofits and charities. I really began to think to myself, like, would I want this man working with my 11-year-old child on a nonprofit? Would I be okay with sending my child to an event that this person is hosting or putting on when this is the kind of language he uses for women who are strangers? I was, initially torn about what should I do about this scenario. There's a few different options. One, you can publicly call him out. And sometimes that's the choice creators make. There's pros and cons to that. You could ignore it, pretend you never saw it. There's pros and cons to that. Ultimately, I decided to send his wife a message to ask, do you know that this is what your husband is out here doing? And then I realized that she definitely knows that's how he is. If he's willing to say it to me, he is for sure saying it to her. There's no question. I did send her a message. She never responded. And I did then decide to contact the nonprofit boards that I could see that he was on.
Oh, let me ask this question. You also noted in the article that you wrote about this experience that when you went to find this person's profile, that he had something like, "The joy of the Lord is my strength." And you say at one point, after reaching out to a lot of other 100 people, you said, with large platforms, asking them about their experiences with hate, and you say, quote, "Nearly every single person reported the same findings. The people sending the messages are overwhelmingly white Christians who want you to know they are Christians via public proclamation," end quote. In some ways, that doesn't necessarily surprise me from some of my own experience, but it's the observation, it's overwhelmingly white Christians who want you to know they are Christians via public proclamation. That is just so fascinating to me. What would you say is going on there in that sort of dynamic?
Well, geez, that is a whole book worth of stuff to tease out. And there actually have been a few people who have written books on these kinds of phenomenons. I truly do believe that if you were to survey any creator of size, they would confirm those findings. They would tell you that it is a specific flavor of Christianity. I want to speak carefully because I don't want anyone to listen to this and think that I am anti-Christian or that I am disparaging the Christian faith or any of those types of things, because that's not my intent at all. I'm reporting true things that happened to me. I do think this is indicative of this political moment. And there have actually been other political moments that have also brought out this kind of behavior. But in this political moment where political identity has become more important to people than their religious faith, and when white Christian nationalism has taken such a prominent seat at the table, white Christian nationalism co-opts the language and the symbols of Christianity for political power. That is what it does. And, most people who truly value their faith will tell you, like, those people don't represent my faith. It pains them to see that this is the face of a belief system that they truly hold dear and that shapes every aspect of their life, that it's painful to be associated with that. Violence, harm, a lack of care for the poor, a lack of care for the elderly, the widowed, the disabled, the sick, that these things have been cast out of a very ancient and deep tradition in favor of the seizure of the means of power, in favor of empire. I truly do think what is at the root of it is an obsession with political power and a conflation of religious identity and political power.
We'd love for you to come see Sharon and myself live at the Skirmerhorn Symphony Center in Nashville on November 23 for our big end-of-year blowout show. NSC Plus subscribers can access pre-sale tickets from the day this episode airs, which is August 4, and tickets are available to the public starting August 11. We don't want you to miss out on the marvelous extravaganza. You can go get those tickets today. You can learn more at nosmallendeavor.com. Coming up is a short break, followed by our discussion on the perils of talking politics in public, why Sharon refuses to be scared into silence, and what each of us can do to help create a more hopeful future.
This podcast is supported by Progressive, a leader in RV insurance. RVs are for sharing adventures with family, friends, and even your pets. So if you bring your cats and dogs along for the ride, you'll want Progressive RV insurance. They protect your cats and dogs like family by offering up to $1,000 in optional coverage for vet bills in case of an RV accident, making it a great companion for the responsible pet owner who loves to travel. See Progressive's other benefits and more when you quote RV insurance at Progressive.com today. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Pet injury is an additional coverage and subject to policy terms.
At Blinds.com, it's not just about window treatments. It's about you, your style, your space, your way. Whether you DIY or want the pros to handle it all, you'll have the confidence of knowing it's done right. From free expert design help to our 100% satisfaction guarantee, everything we do is made to fit your life and your windows. Because at Blinds.com, the only thing we treat better than windows is you. Visit Blinds.com now for up to 40% off site-wide, plus a professional measure at no cost. Rules and restrictions apply.
A Time magazine article indicated that you are a Christian. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. In what ways would you describe the way Christian faith has informed your approach to what you do?
The best analogy I can give you is America's founding principles, right? Like we have these principles of democracy, like the rule of law and pluralism, and we have fair and free elections, and like we could sit here and tease out all the different principles of democracy, and those things are meant to be infused throughout our public life. So to me, the way that my own beliefs function is much the same. They're guiding principles that I try to infuse throughout all of the work that I do. I have no desire to tell people what the right beliefs are, or to tell people that you should ascribe to this set of religious principles or that one. I don't view that as my role at all.
Yeah, thank you. Let me try to hold two questions I've asked you together. One, the one I just asked you about your faith and that description that you gave us, along with an earlier thing that we've discussed about seeking, when possible, to have some sort of collaboration, honoring, love even of enemies, and which is obviously something that's significant in the teachings of Jesus. But again, I want to kind of turn that question on its head just a second and ask this. The call to love one's enemies presumes one has enemies. And so do you have a set of characteristics that would describe who's generally going to fall into your enemy bucket?
Sure do. I could print you up a bingo card. We could compare every single hate message I get, and you would have bingo in 5 moves.
Would you give us some of those? What's on your bingo card?
They are overwhelmingly white evangelical Christians. Overwhelmingly. That is who tells me to kill myself. That's who wishes me bodily harm. That's who is sending me AI pictures of myself being sexually assaulted. That is overwhelmingly who it is. Often they are people with children or grandchildren that they are showcasing in their profile, if their profile is public. A lot of times it's private. I certainly have not done a study of what do y'all do for a living? I couldn't tell you. I don't have enough information to tell you those kinds of other demographics. I can tell you there is a theme related to law enforcement or the military, which is unfortunate. I have a lot of both law enforcement and military in my family. My dad was a disabled veteran who died of his war-related injuries. I have nothing but respect and compassion for people who have served their country, and I'm very open about that. Those are just 2 maybe slightly lower on the totem pole themes that I see. But you know who I don't see telling me to kill myself are Christians of color. You know who I don't see telling me to kill myself are people who go to a Lutheran church or who go to some mainline Protestant denomination. I don't see members of the LDS church telling me to kill myself. I say this with no malice. I know that I might sound insistent because I am, but this truly does not come from a place of malice of I hate all of y'all. To the contrary. But I do think it's important that people know this is happening. I do think that some of y'all better come get your friends. I do think that some of these pastors need to get off of YouTube and to start actually dealing with some of these issues head on instead of trying to generate clicks. I do think that there is a lot that needs to be addressed from inside the house. And if people do not know that there is a fire, then they are not going to address it. So that's why I bring it up, not because I have animosity or hate, but because there's a fire inside the house.
You're in Minnesota, grew up in Minnesota, and then, of course, the recent violence in Minnesota, assassination of Melissa Hortman, her husband, attempted assassination of John Hoffman and his wife. What's that experience done to you? What's it stirred up in you?
You know, when I read that Vance Belter, the man who's accused of assassinating the Hortmans and attempting to assassinate the Hoffmans and had actually tried to go to other people's homes that night and was not successful. When I read that he had a hit list that had over 70 people on it, many of them Minnesotans, some of them people from neighboring states or had other national prominence, but many of them were well-known Minnesotans who were politically active. My very first thought was that there's a good chance that I could be on that list. And I am not an elected official, so I am not out here making policies for other people. But Vance Belter fits the bingo card, Lee, of white evangelical Christian, white Christian nationalist type figure. I was on vacation, by the way, when this happened. My very first thought was, would law enforcement call me? If I was on the list, would they even tell me? What would happen? Do you call people that are on a hit list? I don't know what the protocol is, especially if you have the suspect in custody. My presumption is that I'm not on the list because other people who were on the list were notified. There's a senator from Minnesota who was on the list, the attorney general was on the list, and they came out and said, law enforcement told me that I was on the list. Law enforcement never called me, so my assumption is that I'm not, but they also never published the list, to my knowledge. I mentioned earlier that I'm not a reactionary. I'm not naturally a paranoid person. I'm not somebody who's constantly looking for the boogeyman around every corner. So for me to have that be sort of my knee-jerk reaction, and to be honest, the most telling thing was my husband, who is perhaps the most optimistic person you will ever meet. Slightly infuriatingly optimistic sometimes. His initial reaction was, I wonder if Sharon's on that list. And it's very sobering. It's a very, very sobering thought. Is he the only man who could do something like that? I don't think so.
So in writing about that, you described some of that experience that you just described for us. And yet you go on to say, here's what I do know. You can't scare me into silence. And you go on and say, I have no desire to be chosen, that is to be on that list. But if I am forced to help lead the rise of the resistance, then I would do all I could to act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly into the arena. I would keep doing the next needed thing. I would light someone else's candle with my single flame. And then you also say, if history will remember our names, let it be because we did more than criticize and wring our hands. I don't know if you can say it quite any better than that, but any sort of closing note of encouragement in that regard?
I want people to know that I do not have some kind of like superhuman ability to withstand this type of situation. And so when people feel overwhelmed and downtrodden and discouraged, I don't want them to say, well, I could never be like her. I could never do that. I don't have what it takes. What we can all do is the next needed thing. That is something that is available to every single one of us, because the next needed thing will look different based on our vantage point, based on our resources, based on where we are in time and space. What was needed in 1850 is different than what's needed now. And that's the beauty of that as a concept, is that it's available to every single one of us. It does not require some superhuman ability. It does not require billions of dollars. It doesn't require millions of followers. It doesn't require the ability to step on stage or write a best-selling book. That every single one of us has access to the next needed thing.
Been talking to New York Times bestselling author, America's government teacher, Sharon McMahon. You can follow Sharon on social media at Sharon Says So. And you can come join Sharon and me for a wonderful night here in Nashville, the Sunday night prior to Thanksgiving, November 23, at the spectacular Skirmerhorn Symphony Hall for a big end-of-year blowout and live show. Tickets are on sale now. You can get more information at nosmallendeavor.com. Sharon, thanks for the wonderful conversation today, and we're really looking forward to you coming to Nashville here briefly.
I'm so excited to see you. Thanks, Lee.
Here's just one small closing take on our conversation with Sharon McMahon. First, one thing that I would love to have discussed longer had time allowed, that Sharon contended that the more she learns about history, the more she sees that history really is full of people who learn to work together for the good of their communities, despite having an extremely fractious and contentious history together. That, she said, is how real progress is made. That's perhaps quite a counterintuitive claim. We assume that progress will be made by vanquishing those who disagree with us. Let them be banished, and all will be well. Well, no, suggests Sharon, this is not what history teaches us. There were numerous helpful practices toward a good life, so many in this episode. First, don't let the compassion fatigue get you. You can't do everything, but you can do something. And related to this, Sharon's vision that we can all do for one person what we might wish we could do for everybody. Of course, whatever that good thing is, you cannot possibly do it for everybody, so stop aiming for the impossible. Aim for what is altogether possible. First, just do it for one person. Then maybe you do it for another. Then maybe another. But just start with one. Second, her comments on partisanship. She's not calling us to say nothing about the important issues around us. Instead, she's critiquing a tendency to have a blind allegiance to a person or a party or a viewpoint without critical examination, without being willing to consider alternative viewpoints. Related to this provocative claim, when you're easily angered, she said, you're easily manipulated. And if you like being right, the fastest way to be right is to stop being wrong faster. So slow down with the being easily angered, easily offended, and entertain competing alternative viewpoints. This might be one of the best things that we can do to contribute to the common good. Last, to keep doing the next needed thing. Light somebody else's candle with your single little flame. She concluded, if history will remember our names, let it be because we did more than criticize and wring our hands. What lovely pearls of wisdom. That's just one small take on today's episode with Sharon McMahon. You've been listening to No Small Endeavor and our interview with New York Times bestselling author and educator Sharon McMahon. She's widely known as America's government teacher, and her wide array of loving followers known as the Governerds. We gratefully acknowledge the support of Lilly Endowment Incorporated, a private philanthropic foundation supporting the causes of community development, education, and religion. Our thanks to all the stellar team that makes this show possible: Christy Bragg, Jacob Lewis, Carriet Harmon, Jason Cheesley, Sophie Byard, Kate Hayes, Mary Evelyn Brown, and Audrey Griffith. Our theme song was composed by Tim Lauer. Thanks for listening, and let's keep exploring what it means to live a good life together. No Small Endeavor is a production of Tokens Media, LLC, and
Great Feeling Studio.